Story 1. I usually tell someone a story about an abusive ex I had. All the stories are true. They were things my mother did to me. When I say I escaped, people usually congratulate me. When I then say it was my mother, they become uncomfortable because they have to backtrack or accept that not all parents should be parents. It is hard to convey what happened because people do not know what it is like to have no parent, to turn to when afraid, sick, or in trouble. They do not know what it is like to be terrified every day because you never know what will set that parent off. There is so much I cannot explain because even I do not know how to explain it. Being physically hurt and screamed at is easier for people to understand, and thankfully my mother did that, but the other forms of abuse are much harder to explain. I do not even try. Story 2. I ask them 2 questions. First, I choose one of my mother's many punishments and ask whether they would be upset if I did the same to them. Then I ask why I should not be angry that my mother did it to me. Story 3. My dad was arrested for looking at child sexual abuse material 2 weeks before my 11th birthday. My parents are still married to this day. Story 4. Not parents but grandmother. She was extremely abusive when I turned out to be someone different from the grandchild she wanted. She threatened to tie me to a tree and beat me when I was 20 and my father, her son, was dying of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. She told me she would never meet a woman partner I had. We got into screaming matches because of what she said. The last thing she said to me before I blocked her was that my uncle had died. I sobbed for days. She is still alive as far as I know. I expect I will get a call from someone on that side of my family telling me that she has died. I am estranged from that side of my family because of similar treatment. I will not go to her funeral. When people try to invoke the "but she is your grandmother" card, I tell them that she is a fucking bitch. Story 5. My adoptive parents relinquished their parental rights a couple of months after we all experienced September 11, 2001. I had just turned 14. My adoptive mother was openly angry and told me she wished I had died. She treated me like household help. She did not want to adopt me and only agreed because her doctor told her it would increase her chances of getting pregnant. She later became pregnant. Her daughter was encouraged to physically harm me, and I was not allowed to retaliate or move away from her. My earliest memories are of my adoptive mother having miscarriages and screaming at me, or of her crying and stripping me naked to force me to cuddle her while she was also naked. At the time, this was described as a form of attachment therapy. She deprived me of food, hit me, berated me daily, sent me to school dirty in clothes that did not fit, and never taught me about menstruation. Despite being relatively well off and having an au pair and babysitters, they provided little hands-on care, even though my adoptive mother was a stay-at-home mother for most of my childhood. I was abused in every conceivable way at the first residential facility I stayed at, even being made to work on a nearby farm. I was almost kidnapped by a staff member and I was sexually assaulted by one of the administrators there. She expected me to be grateful for that experience and had the attitude that my own family did not want me, so she could treat me however she wanted. This reflects a common societal assumption that adopted children are unwanted. I was actually loved and wanted by my biological family. My adoption was not even fully legal. Today, the person who facilitated it would likely face criminal charges or prison time. I am now legally related to that person through adoption. Many extended family members saw how I was being treated, especially since their biological daughter was treated much better, yet they still told me I should be grateful to have been adopted and that they were still my parents. Story 6. My father was mentally ill, suicidal, and a neo-Nazi. He died when I was 24. I am nothing like him, and he did not like me. Story 7. I am incapable of feeling pride in anything I do and have an intense hatred for my body, most of my thoughts, and anything I create. I always feel that I have failed to be what I should be, no matter who I am or what I am doing in my life. I will run myself ragged rather than risk disappointing someone, and if what I do for them is less than perfect, I will be disappointed in myself on their behalf. A little while back there was a fly in the vestibule between 2 doors at my apartment complex, and I held the outer door open until it flew out because it hurt to think of it spending the rest of its short life trapped there. When my mother was on her deathbed, I held her hand and sang a song she had sung to me when I was a child, and I lied to her that she had always done her best and had never failed me. The stroke had been pretty bad, but she was able to smile at me for that. But I could not stay with her until she passed. I could not do it. It is my hope that she did not become conscious again after I left, but I will never know. I do not know if she died alone, and I will hate myself for the rest of my life for that weakness. One more bit of hate piled atop the rest. So it was pretty rough. Story 8. My adoptive dad moved out when I was 15 after my adoptive mom finally got the courage to file for divorce. I have not spoken a word to him in 22 years. He was physically, mentally, and verbally abusive to me and my mom. My brother somehow escaped the abuse, and I am very thankful for that. After years of therapy, I no longer hate him. I feel pity and sympathy for him. He is a textbook narcissist and mentally unwell. I am not saying I condone his actions, but I have forgiven him and decided to move on with my life. I am content never to speak with him again. This experience taught me to have no tolerance for toxic relationships or friendships. I am quick to put my foot down or walk away when I see toxicity or controlling behavior. Story 9. She attacked me with a knife when I was younger, but she claimed to be wheelchair-bound for psychological reasons. I ran around the corner, went upstairs, and threw things at her while I called the police. Some years later, she tried to drown my younger brother in a hotel bathtub, but he did not fit in the tub, so he walked out and called me to pick him up. While we were living with my older brother, she locked his children in a car in the Texas heat because they kept asking her to take them somewhere. A neighbor saw them and let them out. Arguably, these were some of the tamer things she did. Story 10. I got that from my aunt, my flying monkey, after I finally decided to go no contact. The last time she said it, I gave up trying to protect my father's reputation and the family secrets and gave her a graphic account of the time my father tried to strangle my mother to death in front of me when I was 6 or 7. After that, whenever I spoke with her, she made half-hearted attempts to flip the narrative, but she was never as aggressive. With other people, it depends on how they approach it. If they are the Jesus forgives type, I tell them you can only forgive someone after they stop stepping on you. If you forgive while they are standing on your neck, you are not forgiving, you are being a doormat. If they say, forgiveness is good for you, hate is like drinking poison, I respond that my anger is not like drinking poison, ant flying monkey. My anger is a cloak of righteousness that shields me from further abuse. It is just and justified. It rises up to protect me and reminds me that I am worth fighting for. My anger is the anger you should have felt at someone abusing me. Because you did not, I have to. I am my own best friend. I will brook no nonsense, and I will stand up for myself. Story 11. I get the same, oh, but he is still family response when I explain to relatives that I do not spend time with my brother, who supports concentration camps for gay people and calls for their killing. They always assume I should look past that because he is family. I explain it would be too disrespectful to my gay friends to spend time with someone who is openly calling for their death. When I put it in extreme terms, they generally stop asking and let it go. But the odd part is I get asked, oh, why do you not just ignore that and be nice when you are around him? He never gets asked, why do you support concentration camps? And could you not express that around the family? It is a huge double standard. I am the asshole for not spending time with him, but he is not the asshole for his views. Strange world. Story 12. I was adopted and survived pediatric cancer. My mother could never handle me getting more attention than she did. My half-sister hates me and was verbally abusive to me when she was in her 20s and I was 10. My father sides with her and has never held her accountable. Story 13. I still hear that from some family members. It was so long ago. Why do you have to talk about it? Their denial comforts those who want to see my parents in a certain way. My parents were not all bad, but my mother was abusive, and it is exhausting to deal with people who insist you skip over or deny those parts of your life, or risk being cut off from them. Abusive parents leave a legacy of damage you must deal with for as long as you live. Story 14. My parents cheated on each other, physically abused each other and us, manufactured methamphetamine, and sold it to teenagers. They had my brother making meth. I did not have a stable environment. When they argued, they dragged us into it. My mother had my father. Involuntarily committed under the Baker Act so she could have sex with men at the house. We slept in a tent by the lake for a week because she left. I moved in with my best friend in high school because she knew it was not a stable or safe environment. There is much more. Story 15. I was physically and emotionally abused by my parents. There was no sexual abuse, but it still left me with serious psychological damage. Story 16. My dad ruthlessly cheated on my mom. He manipulated her into housing a drug-abusing prostitute he was publicly dating, which led to a brawl and their divorce. He did not show up to the custody hearing and did not pay child support. My mother worked with him to get what he could for dollars a month while negotiating to have us on weekends. We begged her not to make us go there. He and his girlfriend fought violently. She almost killed him with an axe, broke windows and tables, and stole my 8-year-old clothes to use while prostituting. But he's your father. Respectfully, Mom, fuck him and fuck you. I wish they would go to therapy. Story 17. It is true they are still our parents. It is also true that they can disappoint. Not everyone settles into the role of parenthood, much less does it well. Story 18. I tell people I was raised by wolves. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm a success story. Statistically, I should have been an alcoholic, in jail, or dead. I had no contact with my parents. Now I have grown children who are doing well and who want to spend time with me and their mother. Story 19. My dad was addicted to meth and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. His mood would switch instantly. He and my mom had violent physical fights every month. On every vacation, midway through, he would become irritated and abusive toward everyone. At my first job, he took all my paychecks except enough for gas. When I received my first check, there was no celebration. We went to Walmart and I couldn't cash the check because it was too greasy. When I got back in the car with no money, my dad punched me in the face. We went to another Walmart, and he calmly told me it would be bad if I didn't come back with the check cashed. He and other family members who were addicted to drugs are why I have zero sympathy for people with addictions. Story 20. When I was 8, my incubator held a loaded gun to my head. When I told her I was being molested, she said, "That's just how he plays." He being my stepdad. After my suicide attempts, she asked me, how could I do this to her? She told me I should have been the one to die instead of my father. She would tell me I look disgusting when I eat. Now tell me again about your standard of parenting? That's what I thought. Story 21. My parents gave me complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I am 45 and started trauma therapy this year. I am done with the manipulation and the lies. I think they realize I am out of the cycle because they tread very cautiously now. We are mostly no contact or very low contact. I am probably still considered a disappointment and a problem, but that is their problem. Story 22. As I've gotten older, I've learned not to care what people say. I know what brings me peace, and that will not be disturbed. My mother will die, and I will not attend her funeral. I'm sure my sisters will be pissed. They didn't have to live with her post-divorce while growing up. I shared a birthday with her boyfriend, and his name came first on the cake. She couldn't wait to kick me out to my dad. He only agreed after I begged, and he accepted full custody, but she kept the child support. Fuck that narcissistic boomer bitch. Story 23. I am a therapist. I have heard this before. Some people cannot imagine how bad it can get. I am referring to people who are willfully starved or beaten half to death with a closed fist or with weapons, people who were locked in a basement for days and did not know when they would get their next meal, or people forced to eat their own vomit, or dog feces, clients whose parents forced them to cross-dress, to perform sexual acts, took their money, and left them abandoned for days before the age of 6. People who say that do not know what the absolute fuck they are talking about. Those people are not parents. I have absolutely no qualms about recommending no contact in cases like that. Story 24. My story feels tame compared to others, but I still grew up with a lot of emotional abuse. My mother was obsessed with my weight and appearance my entire life. I was raised on a very restrictive diet. She lied to me and everyone around me, claiming I was allergic to dairy when I was not, to further restrict my diet. She would constantly criticize my weight and body even though I was very thin growing up. I remember being lectured about calories and food from a very young age. Some memories. She tried to get me to take Orlistat when I was a teenager even though I was a size 3 at the time. She cornered me and berated me about my weight on vacation because I ate a pastry for breakfast. I was underweight at the time. A few months after leaving an abusive relationship, I was finally feeling comfortable enough to leave the house again and was going to a water park with friends when my mother stopped me and told me I could not go because I had too much cellulite on my legs. My ex literally starved me during that same abusive relationship, and when I told my mother, her response was, "If he starved you, then why are you still fat?" I was not even overweight. I am in my 30s now, and I still have a horrible relationship with food and an eating disorder. I will probably never actually get better. I experienced constant gaslighting, screaming, and verbal abuse. Every bit of self-worth I had was destroyed before I was even an adult. My first Christmas with my daughter was ruined by my mother getting in my face, screaming and swearing at me because I was 20 minutes late. I had a 3-month-old and was recovering from bronchitis. I drove an hour to get to her house. This is normal behavior from her. No love or affection, just coldness. I can complain about this for hours. I am trying to break the generational trauma and be a better parent to my children. Story 25. That statement would make me very angry. My father was an abusive alcoholic, and my mother did nothing to stop the abuse. To me, she was worse than he was. Story 26. My mother was physically, emotionally, and spiritually abusive. I believe she was the victim of the same abuse and probably other types as a child. She sought no professional help and justified her actions by saying, "At least you don't have it as bad as I did." When I had been married a year at age 25, she began to claim that it was my father who had been the perpetrator of all the abuse. I warned her I would cut her off if she continued to spread those lies. She persisted, so I told her I would never speak to her again. When others repeated that line, I just smiled. There was no point in justifying my decision. They could only view the situation through the lens of their own relationship with their mothers. If they asked, "What if you regret never reconciling?" I would turn it around by saying, "I am more likely to regret reconciling and reestablishing the same destructive patterns of behavior." She passed when I turned 51, and I have never regretted the lack of relationship. Story 27. I don't think anyone truly understands the damage of being emotionally hurt by your own mother, except others who have been emotionally hurt by their mothers. Anytime I talked about the mess of my relationship with my mother, people would just say, "But she's your mom. She loves you in her own way, and you should love her unconditionally." My mother is codependent and believes a man will make her whole. She would, in nearly all circumstances, trust a man's word over a woman's. This was disconcerting as her only daughter. At 15, she told me she loved her new boyfriend of 4 months more than she loved me. At 16, she forgot my birthday because her boyfriend wanted to go out that weekend. The breaking point came at 19 when I gave her an ultimatum. If she let her lying, cheating ex-boyfriend back into the house, the man I had changed the locks on after, he left with his mistress using my entire paycheck, I would leave. The stress caused me to lose 17 pounds in 2 weeks. I slept in the bathroom because I was so nauseous from the stress they put on me. My mental health was in shambles. We could have been on the Jerry Springer show. I told my mother to choose who she wanted to live with, and she chose him. I left, prepared to go to a homeless shelter. My boss let me stay on her couch, and I lived there for 9 months until I saved enough to get an apartment with a friend. Could it have been worse? Sure. My mother never hit me. I think if she had, people would have been less inclined to brush off the emotional abuse she inflicted. Story 28. Not me, but my best friend. I grew up watching how her mother treated her and her siblings, and it was horrifying to witness. She moved in with my family in high school, became emancipated, graduated from college, bought a house, moved to another state, and became the person she needed when she was a child. I have so much respect and admiration for her. It brings me to tears to think about it. Story 29. My mother was complicit in the kidnapping of my child. Telling people that is usually enough to silence them. Story 30. I took estrogen and developed breasts, and suddenly my mom would not speak to me. She thought my being assigned male at birth was a contract that I would live a lifestyle she chose for me based on my genitals. When people hear I do not speak to her, I sometimes get told, "But she is your mother. You have to." I need to explain that she is the one who cut me off. I did not cut her off. Story 31. I used to get really worked up, but I have been estranged for about 8 years and in therapy for 3 years. Now I just look them in the eye and, with a measure of pity, say that we have a different definition of what a parent is, and that mine are neither. People who do not understand abusive parents often do not want to, and it is not my job to make them empathetic. I am who I am not because of my parents, but in spite of them. Story 32. Parenting is hard, so some people will be terrible at it. When the decision to have a baby is subject to enormous social, legal, and financial pressure, some women who do not want children are pressured or forced into something they do not want. It is insulting to assume every parent meets a baseline level of competence and interest. It is tragic that some people dismiss the struggles of generations of women forced to have babies by assuming they do not resent the experience. Although the child is not to blame, a woman forced into motherhood is not wrong for hating parenting. Even animals sometimes reject their young, and saying, "But they are always your parents," gives women less agency and fewer choices than a feral cat. Story 33. Anyone who thinks my father is worth having in one's life is welcome to have him. My lawyer says I have plenty of evidence for a restraining order, and I will be pursuing that rather than his presence. Story 34. That's a lot of cans of worms to open. The end result is that I have no contact with any relatives, and with many others who were actively acting as flying monkeys for them. Can be lonely, but I would rather be lonely than abused and disrespected all the time. Story 35. I set the table and laid out the food every night for the man my entire family knew abused me. I am a messed up person. I am highly attuned to the needs of others and will bend over backwards for people. But if someone crosses me, I will stand up for myself and make them regret it. However, I do not fully value myself. I have to learn to value myself and my time. Story 36. This is going to be long. I am sorry. I do not talk about this often. My parents are terrible. They abandoned me and then had 2 more children. They took me away from my grandparents when I was 12 because I got in trouble at school frequently. Both are addicts. My mother is an alcoholic and uses drugs. My father uses drugs. They divorced exactly 1 week after my 14th birthday. My mother got custody but disappeared, and we stayed with drug users and various family members. Eventually, my father got custody because of this, and my mother moved on with her new boyfriend. They frequently involved us in their fights, and my father forced us to send petty messages to her. Sometimes he would offer $20. My mother eventually married the man, but he was abusive, so a few years later they divorced. 5 years after that divorce, my parents hooked up again, although my father was engaged. My father started beating his new girlfriend and fiancée. In their most recent fight, he tried to suffocate her and she clawed his face to get away. I raised my siblings while living with my father and eventually moved us all in with my grandparents. My father now claims he is dying of syphilis and hepatitis B but refuses to see a doctor. My younger sister and I both moved out at 17, 1 year apart. My brother stays with my grandparents. He is currently 15. I am almost 20 now. I am basically no contact with both parents, and my grandmother tried to get me to at least speak to my father in the beginning because he was not the worst, but recently she sees my side of things and has stopped asking. Nobody else has brought it up since I cursed them out when they mentioned it. Story 37. I ditched them and would not speak to them, and it lifted the biggest weight off my shoulders. I had given them multiple chances to stop being dehumanizing and disrespectful, so there was no reason to communicate with them again. I would rather be completely alone than associate with anyone who routinely betrays my respect and kindness. They were both Catholic, Bible thumpers who pretended to be wealthy. When I was taken to their adult friends' events at church or the country club and left with the other kids, I was not allowed to say what my dad did for work because they did not want it getting around to the other parents that he was only an accountant. I had to pretend I owned things. Usually I picked what I actually wanted and pretended it was mine, or I played with things at my neighbors and lied that they were mine. My mother beat me once because I told a kid I was not allowed to spend money to buy a Powerade in the country club kids area. I think you get the point. There is no need to dig it all up. After their divorce, both of them dated really kind and awesome people who more or less became my actual role models. I might never have been able to stand up for myself if I had not met them, and I am sure they have no idea what an impact they had on my life. I left home when I was 16 and was homeless for a few months, but it was not that bad. I slept on the public beach. There were showers on the sidewalk. I started talking to them again when I was in a better place, and they still treated me the same. We argued all the time, and I kept warning them I would stop if they continued to be so awful. When I changed my number, I simply did not give it to them. It has been about 15 years since. Sometimes I wonder if they have died, or if they wonder if I am okay. Then I remember, forget them. I love my life. I have people who love me and whom I love. I am following my dream of game development after a long career as a graphic designer. None of it would have been possible if they had had their way. In summary, they were toxic, so I cut them out. Now life is great. Story 38. My dad's father was an abusive man who made his entire childhood a misery. He was jealous of how the family treated my dad and wanted to bring him down a notch. My dad suffered regular beatings, was thrown out of the house for no reason, and experienced many other abuses. My grandmother was also abused by him, so my dad maintained a relationship with his father to give his mother a lifeline. However, my grandfather never treated my aunts poorly. My dad only started keeping his distance when my grandmother found the courage to leave him and when I was born, because he was worried I would suffer the same experience he did. A few months ago, I was talking to him about it, and he said, most people who experience what he experienced at the hands of their parents fall into one of two categories. The first is that they become chronic people pleasers who will do anything to make others happy. The second is that they keep their distance and love that person from afar. Story 39. I have an older brother, and because of that, my mom wanted a daughter to complete the set. I'm not a girl, and my mom has never forgiven me for ruining her perfect family. One of my earliest memories is being dragged out of bed in the middle of the night, thrown into a storage room, and beaten by her while I sobbed. I don't even think I was 4 at the time. That's what my childhood was. Being beaten because my mom thought I was misbehaving, for making what she saw as a mistake no matter how small, or for getting what she thought were bad grades. Sometimes it felt like she just did it because she could. She constantly tore me down mentally, and that intensified when someone called Child Protective Services. She was spooked enough to stop hitting my siblings and me. Friends told me my mom didn't mean it and that her threats were empty. A couple of friends came over one day while my mom was out, and I was asked to bring the laundry in first. I had forgotten to bring one small hand towel in because it was on my neighbor's line, and I thought it belonged to them. My mom saw it was still outside, and before she even stepped inside, she screamed at me, called me names, and threatened me. My friends sat there in shock because they had never seen that before, and they believed me when I said I wasn't exaggerating. I don't really talk about family with people anymore because I don't want to have to explain myself just to hear, she's your mom. You have to love her. It would be impossible to prove it to them by showing my mom screaming at me when her public mask is off, especially since I no longer live with her. Story 40. When a parent attempts to kill you or enables the other parent to do so, both violate the social contract that says no matter how abusive they may be, they are still your parents. Story 41. Reading The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls felt vindicating. My father was an alcoholic, and my mother had borderline personality disorder. Their pattern of gaslighting, manipulation, shame, and blame required many years of therapy and spiritual work to undo. Yes, they are still my parents. That is a biological fact, and my feelings end there. Story 42. The story would be long. Sexual abuse and emotional abuse and so on. My sexual abusers were my parents. They are deceased. My emotionally abusive mother, who turned a blind eye, is still alive. I am in my second round of no contact with her. It is so hard grieving the parents I deserved. I am willing to go to therapy and work on a relationship, but she demands a relationship without boundaries or accountability for the abuse. She says she is the victim, that I am the narcissist, and that I am punishing her. I focus too much on the past. Why can't I just get over it? Boundaries must be earned with her. If you have removed an abusive parent from your life, good job. Do not let anyone question your experience. It is one of the most hurtful choices a person can make. Remember, it is a privilege for someone to be in your life, not a right. Keep those boundaries up. Story 43. My wife's grandmother said that to her about her mother. I asked the grandmother where her daughter had learned to be so mean and cruel. The grandmother admitted sheepishly that she had not raised her daughter until her teenage years and would not know. Story 44. My father was arrested when I was 9 after sexually abusing my older brother and me for over a year. Our mother had abandoned us with him when I was 6. She did not make any effort to contact us until I was in my late 20s. Before she left, she knew at the very least that he was a violent, unstable addict who would not hesitate to beat his children. I do not owe them a relationship. I only talk to my mother because she had more children after remarrying, and I like them. They are nice young men. She can take a long walk off a short pier for all I care. Story 45. I ask them about the news stories of children murdered by their parents, then say, nobody believed it before they died. Story 46. The last thing my mother said to me before I cut her out of my life was, there is nowhere in the world you will be safe from me. I have not spoken to her in almost a decade, but I still have nightmares in which I wake up screaming. Most people outside my immediate circle have no idea I had an abusive childhood. I stopped telling people because I hate how they react. Story 47. Abusive parents do not deserve to have any children living with them under the same roof. Story 48. I am getting ready to start a movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy in a few months, and I am on medication. I do not respond when I receive messages like this. I just stare at them. Story 49. I realized that if we told people what was going on, it only raised suspicion. She had branded me a fanatical liar to her coworkers, my teachers, principal, and others. There were many small abuses that deflated my confidence in myself and my senses. At some point I recovered, but the damage was subtle. Story 50. I had no contact with my mother for many years, from age 18 to 25. I remember meeting people at school who could not understand having a neglectful mother who was addicted to drugs. My father had already passed away by then. Those people had parents who cared for them and did not leave them with strangers while they went to use drugs or expose them to other harms I experienced. It deeply affected the man I dated. He could not comprehend the situation and could not fix it, which harmed our relationship. Story 51. It's tough when people try to push that narrative. Sometimes it's about protecting yourself, not just sticking to family ties. I hope you're doing better now. Story 52. I have just learned that my relationship with my father is not the same as most people have. Their desire to remain attached to their father was probably influenced by a healthy relationship with him. I told them I have not had a healthy relationship with my father and that while I understand their concern, it is not the same for me. It is more like a distant cousin you know about but do not see. Story 53. I learned I did not deserve the abuse and went no contact. My therapist described a beating of a dog, and I was horrified. She said I was that dog. If you would not treat an animal that way, treating a person you chose to bring into this world that way is equally unforgivable. People who beat dogs and children do not change. They only learn to hide the abuse better. It is okay to prevent people who hurt you from having access to you. Story 54. My mom was and is an excellent teacher. She was an awful parent. There are many things that happened, either physically or emotionally, that I've become indifferent about, but I can never forgive her for not believing me when I said I was sexually assaulted and then setting it up to happen again. He said our friends would show up to his birthday party, but he lied and it was just us. I bring up her being a teacher because she has many grateful students. One even became my pharmacy technician. She asked if I was my mother's surname, and I explained that I have a different surname now. I don't think she thought very hard about why that might be. It hurts to hear people praise your abuser. It's also unsettling when strangers recognize you by sight, and feel the need to introduce themselves. It doesn't occur to them that it might be creepy to be approached by a group of people I don't know, even if they explain that my mom taught them. They don't consider that maybe I never wanted my mom to tell them enough about me for them to recognize me in public as her child. I've since moved, but after the pharmacy incident I promised myself that if someone approached me like that again, I would tell them how glad I was that she had been a good teacher to them, but that she did not match that energy at home. I got a bit off topic there, but I remember my cousin giving me the whole "your mom will always be your mom" speech. Her dad, my uncle, is a terrible person and she forgave him, so clearly I should be able to do the same, right? Next time someone says that to me, I'll explain the second paragraph to them. Story 55. I usually say something like, "You do not know my life or how much this affected me, so please do not say that again," and then try to forget how ignorant they were, laughing out loud. It is no laughing matter. I am messed up for life now. I am on a healing journey and it is going well, so I try not to be too upset by the question. It is just someone who does not get it. Unfortunately, people cannot read minds. Story 56. My father was a police officer. He had a certificate for fighting domestic violence on the wall. The same wall where he threw my brother, broke a puppy's nose, and threw another dog. I had it worse than my brother. He called me lazy and worthless. He flipped my room for being too messy. I was hit and choked in public because he had told my brother to be somewhere and thought he had told me as well. When he had not, I was yelled at for not knowing. He broke my things and searched my backpack at random. I had no privacy. In 7th grade, he grounded me to the house until I had all the grades. I had not had an A grade since 5th grade. It turns out I had undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I was diagnosed 3 to 4 years ago, which is why I could not just get it together. I do better on medication. I have not spoken to him in 22 years. Story 57. Warning. Child abuse, neglect, sexual assault, animal abuse, and murder, etc. Strong stomach needed. My stepmother and stepfather were my worst abusers. They starved and neglected me in every way, from food to medical care to basics like a bed and toothbrushes. They would give me pets and then murder them. My stepfather sexually assaulted me every day I was with them. I literally had to bury or dispose of my pets' corpses, and I was sometimes beaten with a pet's corpse as punishment. My fingers were broken. I literally slept on the floor in clothes, towels, or whatever else I could find. I had no space of my own. I had few toys, and anything nice I was given was taken, sold, re-gifted to my stepfather's children, or broken as punishment within days or weeks. I was waterboarded in the bathtub until I had seizures multiple times. I was put in the intensive care unit once because my stepfather nearly beat me to death over stealing a loaf of bread. He used me for child pornography. I was beaten so badly that to this day I walk with a cane, struggle with medical issues, and am disabled. Thankfully, I no longer have to push myself to work. My father's home was nicer. I had a bed, toys, and a room, but I was often screamed at, hit, and shaken. I was confined to the upstairs almost entirely. I lived 100% alone upstairs to the point that I would drink from the sink if I was thirsty because I could not go downstairs to the kitchen without being screamed at or hit. It was an abusive home, but better than my mother's. I was left alone as long as I was quiet and stayed upstairs. I only went down at dinner time. They also had other issues. If I threw a fit, I received extreme punishments. If I threw a fit at 6, my stuffed animals might be taken away until I was 12. My father knew the abuse was happening at my mother's, but he denied it because his wife told him she would divorce him if he tried to get full custody. She would scream, "I hate you," at me. I alternated between my mother's and my father's each week. As I got older, the abuse at my mother's worsened until I was nearly killed several times. Child Protective Services dismissed my reports repeatedly until I was 13. I essentially tried to kill myself and admitted everything while screaming as I tried to end my life in a hospital. I had to be physically restrained and given medical treatment because I was also ill and had health complications from my last beating. I was hospitalized for over 3 months. Eventually, Child Protective Services removed me and gave custody to my father full-time. I went from horrific abuse to lesser abuse. At first I saw my father as a hero because his home was better than my mother's, and I did not initially recognize some of what he did as abuse. I was a very traumatized child he did not know how to handle, so he medicated me. I was put on more than 10 pills a day and suffered horrific side effects. Heart and liver problems, vomiting, weight loss when I was already malnourished and had an eating disorder from my mother, poisoning from conflicting medications, medication-induced suicidal thoughts that caused a mental breakdown, loss of bowel control, and urinary incontinence. I still have bladder issues, though treatment and doctors have helped. The medication was considered acceptable because it kept me calm, prevented tantrums and severe post-traumatic stress disorder episodes, and made it possible for me to be ignored as long as I stayed quiet upstairs. I married at 18 or 19, essentially forced because I was too disabled to work and feared being homeless. I ran away with my now ex to another state and escaped the abuse. To this day, my father does not acknowledge that he abused me. He still says he saved me from my mother and thinks he is a hero. I speak to him once or twice a year, maybe one call every 4 or 5 months. I am careful about what he knows and have seen him in person maybe twice in the last 10 years. I moved 1,300 miles away and have no regrets. He does not know I am engaged or that I am legally changing my name, and he likely never will. I still hear comments like, "They are family. He did his best raising you, and you just don't respect how hard it must have been. And he's still your parent." I have essentially cut him off. I am 1,300 miles away with an amazing partner. I have adopted 3 cats, now aged 1 to 5 years, and they are spoiled rotten. They cry if they do not get their weekly puzzle toy dental treats. I have wonderful friends and a chosen family. I have received therapy and real medical help, and I found my own religion, rather than the one my father forced on me. I am happy. I still struggle, but I have no regrets cutting off my parents and family. They were horribly bad parents and were not there for me when I needed them. People who are estranged from their parents usually have a reason, and no one is owed an explanation. If someone tells me, "But it's family," I usually respond that family does not let people rape children or take a child's dismembered pet and beat the child with it for talking back. Usually those people stop speaking to me, and I hope I make some people think twice before excusing abuse with, "But it's family." It is none of their business, and people do not cut off family for fun. Sorry for the vent. This came up recently and it is a hot topic for me. Story 58. I cut contact with my parents. I feel like the millennial generation is the first to generally recognize child abuse by parents as evil. I never had a peer my age or younger say, but they are still your parents. But baby boomers seem to take pleasure when you tell them your parents abused you. They might even brag about their preferred methods of abusing children. Story 59. What is the worst acceptable thing you feel they can do? My boyfriend's family got upset that I cut my dad off after he sent me photos of animals he had killed. One was a pig from his farm, smiling while it hung upside down, bleeding out. He hit me when I was a child for being born a girl. I am cisgender and he wanted a boy, as if it were within my control. He neglected me, even denying basic food and water. He lied constantly, abandoned us, abused my pets, and much more. My boyfriend's mother said that people make mistakes and that at the end of the day, he is still your father whether you like it or not. And she said the last sentence in a mocking tone. I said, no, that does not mean I have to call him dad. Her ex-husband was very abusive to her and their children. She let it happen because she said she loved him so much. I told her that some people even let their children be abused just to keep the man around, and that at least I am not that stupid, and she tried to defend herself. She continued to insist that family is family and you should not cut them off. I mentioned I had a friend who was raped by her father and asked whether she should forgive him. I felt anger when I was told that this was wrong, but that with time she would forgive him. I cannot understand that logic. Even when my boyfriend says he still respects his dad, I ask, what about all the abuse? What about the fact that he kicked you all out onto the street? He sold the house to fund his secret second family. What about him only calling you for money? He replies that he is still his dad and you still have to respect your parents. I can't grasp it. Story 60. I struggle really hard with self-confidence. I know my father was abusive, but why do I basically give up on everything I want? Why am I a perfectionist? When I was 11 or 12, I suddenly started reading beyond my grade level. I was reading at a second grade level in fourth grade. Reading became my escape in fifth grade, and by seventh grade, I was reading at a college level. Of course, I still read books for my age like Twilight. I was so proud of myself. I told my father, and he proceeded to tell me I could not possibly have comprehended what I was reading. He asked me several questions from the book, then read a line that was literally about the color of Bella's shirt. It was a single line saying she was wearing a blue shirt, but he did not say the word blue and simply told me to tell him what the color was. How was I supposed to remember her shirt was blue? It was not important to the book. I said red, and he told me I clearly did not comprehend what I was reading, handed the book back, and left my room. Then he had his girlfriend stalk me to make sure I was alone, and later made reasons up to yell at and hit me, threatened to take me out of school so I would not have friends, and tell me they would tell the school I was to be isolated with no friends. One time I was given a bottle of water and a piece of pizza and told I was not allowed to leave the room except to use the bathroom, not even to get water or food as punishment for multiple days. My grandmother said she would have taken me so I would get space. Child Protective Services got involved and asked her if she would take me. She said no. I was put in foster care for 3 months before being returned to my father, who did not want to go to jail because of the court, so he sent me across the country to live with my mother. My mother then texted me vile things about my grandmother and said my grandmother should have gotten custody, not her. I saw him 2 weeks ago and I have come to the conclusion I cannot forgive him. He is still the same a decade later. He also called me a whore when I was sexually assaulted. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.